Welcome into another edition of Analytics Unplugged with Buxton. I'm Bill Stinneford alongside Nikki Viner. Normally we have Peter Healy, but we've upgraded today with Nikki Viner, who's also one of the team members here at Buxton. For those who are watching this who may have never met you on Analytics Unplugged, why don't you give a little bit of your background?
Sure. Hi, Nikki Viner. I've been with Buxton for about 5.5 years. I was actually a client for 15 years. So 5 years in retail and then 10 years in healthcare with Mercy Health out of St. Louis, where I led initially our strategy for growth, starting with primary care using Buxton Analytics. And then over time, the relationship with Buxton included a lot of other service lines, as well as marketing efforts and how to target and also how to measure.
And in the 5.5 years you've been with Buxton, obviously you've done a lot of things healthcare related, but what would you say was sort of the reason that you came and what you've been trying to accomplish with the healthcare solutions over that time?
Sure. I think, the underlying reason why I came is we were so successful in my experience with Buxton in both in retail and in healthcare, and sort of that ability to use data to really inform growth and help. It really truly helped our organizations make better decisions. And how can I help others do that was ultimately the reason why I came. And I think what I've learned since I've been here has truly been how other organizations have used the analytics and the platform and really truly expanded my knowledge, and how do you share that with others, which has been pretty awesome.
Right. And so I think that's really interesting too, because I've been here 20 years, right, at Buxton, and I grew up in our retail vertical and then started working in the healthcare vertical in 2014, I think. Mm-hmm. And it was almost like two separate companies at the time. Mm-hmm. There were the way we did healthcare solutions and the way we did retail solutions, but having that retail mindset, which you did too, coming from FedEx, then going to Mercy, it was like when you would talk to healthcare leadership, it would be like, okay, what are you trying to accomplish? And obviously growth was important. But when you would talk to them, it was very old school, inefficient ways of doing things, potentially putting large capital at risk with a bad process of making decisions, which was very similar to what I saw when I first started at Buxton in retail, but like 10 years before.
Right.
And then so in those conversations, you'd sort of say, hey, okay, if you're trying to accomplish these things, you're trying to optimize your planning, you're trying to maximize performance of existing locations, you're trying to find the best places to put services, to put new locations. What if you could see things this way? And was starting to just talk to them about how sort of our retail solutions were from an outpatient or an ambulatory standpoint. Like retail is that, just not the healthcare component.
Right.
And they were like, oh my gosh, you could do it like that. And so then it was this great evolution of the solutions of, hey, let's blend our retail understanding with getting really smart about healthcare and data and smart people bringing in like you, all wrapped around the understanding of a patient as a consumer.
Yes.
And that really has created, I think, something that's been transformative for healthcare companies as they look to expand.
Absolutely. I think it is that when you have conversations in healthcare about the fact that potential patients have choice, right? And understanding who would choose you, who would need your services, right? And sort of that ability to then also thread in all of the healthcare data that we have with those solutions, it's really been an awesome process, and the evolution we've gone through as an organization with, initially everything you had to have custom. Right. And now that we have solutions that are kind of wherever the client is in their evolution on growth, and they don't have to share data where historically they did, and things like that. But what I love about sort of that retail with the healthcare is you have the consumer in mind, which should be the priority, but then what else? Right. And how do you come up with the best solution for each client and their business use case specifically? Right.
And so that's, and so I think it's interesting because I think when a lot of healthcare leadership, especially with health systems, but also with other just specialty type healthcare, the first thing is, tell me about your demand data, tell me about your insurance data, tell me about provider data. And clearly that's important. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But what they don't, but part of the problem with that is that data is typically in like a two-dimensional way. In this county, there are X amount of orthopedic visits, It's like, well, where? I mean, in Dallas County, there's a couple million,
really big,
right? In Harris County in Houston, there's millions of people. So where within that county that's way too big? So how do you then take the data and apply it to where it's geospatial? You can see where specifically within those areas, where are the micro areas that these things are occurring or happening. But you don't just want to look at healthcare data. You want to blend it with consumer data, looking at not just demographics, how do people live their lives, how do they spend their money? And that's still foreign to some people. And then looking at retail data, looking at traffic data, looking at growth data, all these things, and bringing those things together, which is something that I think is unique to Buxton.
It absolutely is, because I think it's, if you think about healthcare, whether they are health systems, specialty, or retail health, they know everything about their patients, right? Because it's healthcare, and it's but that's a very narrow view of any data, and how do you apply sort of that knowledge to potential patients for growth? And that's the beauty of what some of the solutions that we've created, applying all those things, the demographic, psychographic, the demand, the payer, all of that, into solutions that they can kind of give not always the answer, but the place to start, to create that strategy. And, as I mentioned before, consumer comes first, right? And then it is layering in what's important to your business. If you're a dental organization, what's most important to you? And really, we think about dental, it's about, I need to get patients early when they move into the market, or, right? Things like that as pediatric dental patients age, and just understanding all of those components about a business. That's how I think our solutions can be a good partner for anybody who's ready for growth.
Right. And I do think we're going to get into the new healthcare data that we have, but I do think that that's important to flesh out. A minute ago, you said, understand sort of the patient as a consumer. And so when you say that to people, sometimes they'll say, oh, sure, for like urgent care or for dental, right? But orthopedics, I mean, that's like a referral. Well, yes and no.
It is, yeah.
I mean, there's still referral components that you have to be strong about, where are those leads coming from? But there are very few service lines, and there are still some obviously, but there are very few service lines where healthcare companies are not all, but some are not going directly to the consumer. Knee pain, come visit, let's check you out. Dermatology, even cancer. I mean, when you see MD Anderson, or you see other people doing commercials where they're trying to pull people from markets all over, not just in Houston, they are, obviously that's something that, is hopefully doesn't happen. But if it happens, they want you to, they've built the thing, we're the leader in this or whatever. And so you see it all the time. Well, when people are making a decision, how do you can make them make the right decision, and who to specifically be around, put your locations around, who to target, if you truly understand that consumer beyond just demographics. How do they live their lives? How do they spend their money? What are they watching on TV? What are they on Meta, Facebook, Instagram, or are they not? They direct, how do they behave? And that consumer understanding weaved in with all of the demand, supply, and insurance data can really be something that helps you have an edge on your competition.
Absolutely. And I think it's important to understand there is not a single data element that somebody should use to make a decision for a location. Right. And I think in many cases that can be a challenge within an organization, because I think in all my years in real estate, I before I became a Buxton client, I was a real estate professional, and everybody has an opinion and that they think they know real estate. Right. And so I think one of the things I learned early on in my retail experience was data can take you to where you need to go. Right. And you need to use that data, but it is not It's the analytics behind it. What's the insight from that data, right? And each individual component is important, but it's just data when you have those individual components, right? And it's the ability to weave all of that together into a solution that says, here's where you should start.
Right. But you do, once you get to that point, you do want to get into and validate and verify the very specific data based on demand, so claims, where's the supply, how many physicians of a particular type are there, where are the hospitals, et cetera, and then obviously insurance. And so for those that don't know, with Buxton, we invest heavily in data sets so that it isn't just one data set, and it's having really smart people and proprietary methodologies that know what to do with all that data to bring out the insights. But you have to have that raw material. You have to have the best of the raw material. And so we continually pioneer our healthcare solutions to help our clients. That's with continual investments in technology, in people, and in data. So we've just brought on some really exciting new data sets in demand and insurance, and I wanted to know if you would kind of highlight some of that.
Love to. What I love about this data is, so in many cases, we'll have potential clients who are like, well, do you have claims data? And we don't have raw claims data, right? Because that's a look backwards. And what we do have is...
And there's also holes in coverage in certain areas, right?
Yes. So
some areas have 100% coverage of claims, some areas have 23%, and that becomes very problematic.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So the data that we have invested in is projection data, right? So it's built on actual claims. Yep. And the magic of, using an actuarial is the ability to then forecast that for full population.
Looking at the demographics of these areas in combination with the current claims data that can be seen in the raw data.
Yeah. And so it's the beauty of, to your point, we have payer data. So understanding commercial insurance versus Medicare Advantage. We TRICARE and VA insurance now. So we've invested sort of understanding that, because whatever your business case is, that payer in healthcare is so important. You could be a pediatric dental organization that wants to understand Medicaid, because Medicaid pays pretty well on for dental pediatrics. But if you are, an orthopedic surgeon, you want to understand commercial insurance, and then secondarily Medicare, traditional, more so than Medicare Advantage, right? So just sort of that understanding, that's what we have. And so it represents full population, and it's down to the zip code level, which is also a big difference from raw claims data, which is actually typically a zip 3. So, which is a huge geography, right? So, and why we think this kind of data is important. So not only the payer, but we have by specialty or subspecialty, same level of demand estimated for visits, procedures, and inpatient. How to look forward. You think about our clients, it's the multi-million-dollar decision to build a new facility, or if it's a smaller, right, but it's that ability to understand all those elements together. Is this the right location? And with a 5-year forecast, we enable that to go, okay, well, we know there's growth in this service line or this service. We know that the payer mix, based upon the modeling, that this will be a good location in 5 years.
Right. That's great. So what is that enabling our clients who leverage that data to do that maybe even 6 months ago, before we released this data, they weren't able to do, or maybe weren't able to do as well?
I think the understanding at a more granular level than what we've had historically even. So I think, to your point about we continually invest and improve, that's what this iteration of the data has done. If you think about the Medicare space, historically, we've only had Medicare as a lump, right? As far as any payer mix data, we now split out Medicare Advantage. That is such a huge piece of the pie now, and to understand what that is and the business requirements for our clients on each one of those.
That's great. That's great. And so, you said something earlier as we kind of wrap this up, and I want to reiterate this too. When you were at Mercy Health and we started working together, we built big custom forecasting models based on adjusting your data with our data. And we still do that for lots of healthcare companies, right? But not everybody wants that or can even get you the data or those types of things. And so we've really broadened the ability for how a healthcare company can engage with us. And so there's a couple of different points on the path, and you can we like to say we meet you where you are. Do you want to describe that journey, what those steps are, so that somebody watching might be, well, I'm not Mercy. It's like, well, that's great. We've got people that have 1 or 2 units that do things, but again, at the appropriate solution for their stage. So you kind of want to describe that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think sort of the entry solution is just the platform and all of the data that we have in there. So and
it doesn't do it justice for our platform is called Scout. It does not do it justice to just call it a mapping and analytics platform. But I like to say, to help people understand it, it's a mapping and analytics platform. Right.
Yeah.
And with all of that data and all of that reporting capability.
And truly the visualization, right? That, there's a lot of reporting in there and which is a nice, but it's also the ability to visualize that data and really get everybody on the same page. And in many cases, our clients also share their patient addresses. We don't get anything other than that, right? Yeah, but it's the ability to visualize by clinic location where their patients come from. So just sort of that ability. So within the platform, just native, is that ability to see your patients, your facilities loaded, demographics, population growth, that sort of traditional data. We also have then the healthcare data. So the payer mix, if you want to see in a 5-digit zip, what does it look like in the area that I want to assess? You have the visit demand. So it's the E&M codes for, a specific specialty, how many of those visits, how many procedure codes for that specialty. And just really that ability to layer all of that data and understand what does it really look like. That's the first place to start. I think probably the second.
And there are many clients that
do that all day long.
That's it.
And love it, right? On the journey, if you are really focused on expansion but if you're unable to share data or if you don't have enough locations really to have anything custom, we now have some great solutions. We have 38 different industry models by specialty or facility type within healthcare that combine all of that data that we've discussed and model it out really where the consumer, and then area draw and competition, all of those layers, understanding how those combine, and then generate an index score, comparing the site you want to assess with benchmark locations. And some of the cool things that come with that model are the patient profile. So the ability to visualize on the map where the households are that are more likely to use or need that service or service line. You can also run reports to understand what your penetration is in those. And then one of the newest things we've added is the ability to hotspot. So we created hotspots. So if somebody is going into a brand new market and they don't know where to begin, if you come into Dallas, Fort Worth, right, where do you start?
Right.
And what we've done is we've taken those industry models and created sort of those layers of using retail and healthcare seed points, so existing locations, and scored them out and sort of average by block group. Where would the data suggest you should begin? And that is an awesome tool because I think, historically we've done custom and created that, but not everybody can do custom, right? So I think those 3 things, the hotspot to understand, where do I begin? The profile layer, where are the patients? So if I'm looking at a site, are all the potential patients on the west side of a zip code and I'm looking on the east side of a zip code, right? Just that sort of ability. And the ability to then individually score a site to understand, okay, just from a data perspective, does this make sense?
So to repeat that back, if I am a dermatology company and I have 20 locations and I want to think about growing both with acquisition and potentially like de novo greenfield, but I don't want to give you my data, or I've got all kind of weird, I've got some locations in a downtown, I got some location in a rural area, I don't really think you could make sense of them. I could come to you and you could use an industry experience model for dermatology where we've already set, based on our experience and all the data that we have, we know these are typically the things that correlate with successful dermatology practices. And we can give that to them right away in the platform where they can also visualize dermatology demand, look at particular payer class that they want to go after, see potential patients, look at competition, have all of that visualized, and then also report on where are the best potential opportunities within those markets, and then score individual sites to get a forecast.
Yes.
Without any data.
Without any data.
Turned on right away.
Yes.
That's a long way from when you first started working with Buxton.
Yes. It took us a really long time to get you our data. So, and I think that's the beauty of this solution. And we still have the ability. So in your journey, if you got a major ingestion of capital and your expectations are high growth, we still have the ability to create the custom models
with the white space and all of that. But it's just, again, meet you where you are. Well, it's awesome.
Yeah.
Anything else you wanted to share, or that's on the new data, on anything as you think about our healthcare solutions?
I think the only thing is, it's what I love about the new data. Again, it's forward looking. It's literally built on claims data, right? So sort of that ability to understand that demand, but model it out where it's meaningful from a future standpoint, not just looking at the
Don't skate to where the puck is, skate to where the puck is going.
Going to be, yes. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Bill.
That concludes another edition of Analytics Unplugged. Thank you for your time, and we'll talk to you next time.
To learn more about Buxton, visit our website at buxtonco.com.